YouTube. It's beautiful, isn't it? But I do smile when people say that the world was made just for us, when the waters, the deserts, the polar regions, mountain heights, etc. only leave us with about 9% of the world's surface we can realistically live on. Humans have the frailty of needing to eat a variety of foods several times a day. We're feasted on both by predators and parasites and need to cover our bodies to protect ourselves. We're easily poisoned, weak compared to other animals, and without each other to depend on, we're totally vulnerable. Rather than all this being about us, we've just found a way of making it work for us. And by the way, just over those hills, I think there's Saint-Tropez over there. Anyway, the Jehovah's Witness cult appears to be scaring even its devotees lately. Remember the lady I'd been speaking to more than a year ago? Well, she got in touch and asked to meet again. Apparently, since we'd talked, she'd been looking at the Watchtower and Bible Tract Society through subtly changed eyes, and she had two main concerns she couldn't shake off. She was realising that during field service, she was misleading the householder. Most people don't answer the door, or if they do, the conversation is short. But if there is any interest, she found she had a by any means necessary approach to sustaining it. Such is the pressure she feels to bring new people into the truth. It was as if she'd seen J.W. Ferry talk of using lies to bring people truth and been struck with the irony. But what really shocked her was making a return visit where there was a newspaper detailing the story of 3 elders that protected a self-confessed child raper by refusing to cooperate with police. All the Watchtower stories about the Catholics came to her, and she was forced to come to the realisation that the organisation she served were hypocrites. She was ashamed to be representing people that protected the abuser at the expense of the child. Could she in all clear conscience recruit a family with vulnerable children? But she felt pressure to do just that. She felt pressure to smile, suppress what she knew, and pretend that any unfavourable incidents were just imperfect men ignoring divine guidance. But we all know the pressure we're under to keep Jehovah's name clean. She was facing her own personal crisis of conscience and was realising that she was at a crossroads where she could sell her self-determination and become mindless, an obedient Watchtower drone, or salvage her fading humanity. Was losing her determination, self-determination, really worth the promise of eternal life from an organisation with such a poor track record, and that insists you don't check them? But for me, the biggest shift in her thinking was the realisation that she was working for her reward. And this small change is actually profound. When you work for something, you're paying. When you're paying, you deserve it. When you deserve something, you can examine it. And the only thing to examine is the organisation itself. She has no personal revelation from God to test. She has claims only from self-appointed representatives. She expressed concern about the additional authoritarian attitude the cult seemed to be amassing. The recent magazine telling her to be obedient regardless of the consequences was unnerving, and she wondered if hiding paedophiles would be the limit of their demands. She also began to wonder why the corporation was so anxious to keep members away from the, in quotes, Satan's media. Was it so she wouldn't discover other evils? Yes, and she used that word, evil. And how would you describe a group who refuse to protect children and obstruct the police investigation, obstructing justice? She reminded me of something I'd said that hadn't left her. Morality is something socially agreed upon after assessing an action's impact on others. Morals don't come from a book, because morals change. The Bible writers thought it was moral for a father to sell his daughter to a rapist for silver coins, or that a rape victim should be stoned. Were the elders that obstructed the police immoral monsters, or were they good humans following evil orders? But what of the order givers? Another thing that excited me about the conversation was that for the first time ever, she seemed able to distinguish between God and the men that claim to represent him. Or indeed, the words in a book, and this is enormous. She recognised that claims require evidence. Apparently, after our conversation, she felt the need to confirm much of what I'd been saying about Jehovah's Witnesses being a cult, and she felt the safest and best way to do so was to research another organisation that she knew was dangerous and wrong. And she chose two to look at, the Mormons and Scientology, and the similarities scared her into stopping. She knew they were wrong, but they had near identical apostate and shunning policies, directives to ignore the media, the claim that they were the only truth, and the call for time and money, as well as the push to socialise only with your own. All the basic hallmarks of the Watchtower Society, just with different theology, a different selling point, but each offering their own version of eternal life and paradise. She was also concerned that the governing body appeared to want power without responsibility. When they change the definition of a generation, it's because of Jehovah's new light. Yet, despite being wrong before, they continue to demand absolute obedience, and for the first time, this made no sense to her. I'll let you know how the meet goes when I see her face to face. But before I go, do you feel there's some major changes coming to this cult? We've seen their articles demanding obedience, pushing harder than ever for cash, and rumours of a new Bible. I think there's a major restructuring of their business model coming with the sale of all that property. Till now they've pursued the high volume, low margin profile, just like McDonald's taking a small margin from many people. But since they struggle to recruit and retain, we may see their small flock squeezed for high donations per member, closer to the Scientology business model.